On October 4, 2025, the Supreme Court delivered a historic decision, striking down tariffs imposed by former President Trump. This ruling sent shockwaves through Washington as it marked a rare and forceful check on presidential authority in the realm of economic policy. The justices ruled that the president had exceeded his legal authority, making it clear that even the highest office in the land is not above the constitutional limits set by the founders. This decision reaffirms the delicate constitutional balance of power, emphasizing that the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEEPA, is not a blank check for the executive branch to unilaterally reshape the nation's economy. The court underscored that emergency powers must be used with restraint and clear justification. The case was brought by a coalition of states and businesses, who argued that the tariffs caused significant economic harm, leading to job losses, business closures, and uncertainty for American workers and entrepreneurs. They contended that the president's actions usurped Congress's exclusive power to regulate commerce, a power that is fundamental to the legislative branch's role in shaping national policy. The ruling is a major victory for those advocating for a trade policy guided by Congress, rather than by unilateral executive action. It signals a renewed commitment to checks and balances, and a move toward more transparent, democratically accountable trade decisions. By reasserting its role as a co-equal branch of government, the Supreme Court has sent a powerful message. Even in matters of economic urgency, the executive must respect the boundaries of its authority. This decision will fundamentally reshape U.S. trade policy, requiring future presidents to seek congressional approval for broad tariffs and major economic interventions, ensuring greater oversight and debate. It also challenges the growing trend of declaring national emergencies for economic objectives that are not tied to genuine, immediate crises, curbing the use of emergency powers as a tool for political or economic leverage. With this landmark decision, the era of unilateral presidential trade wars under IEEPA has ended decisively, ushering in a new chapter of shared responsibility and constitutional governance in American economic policy. The Trump administration used IEEPA to justify tariffs, claiming unfair trade practices were a national threat. Critics argued this stretched IEEPA beyond its intended scope, originally for crises like hostage situations. The administration bypassed Congress, using IEEPA for protectionist strategy, deemed an overstep by lower courts. Businesses and states challenged the tariffs, arguing they bypassed legislative authority over trade. A federal appeals court found no genuine emergency justified IEEPA's use, setting the stage for the Supreme Court. The justices were asked to either expand presidential power or restore traditional separation of powers in trade. The Supreme Court's opinion in this case was a masterclass in statutory interpretation, demonstrating the justices' careful attention to the letter and spirit of the law. They meticulously examined the language of the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEEPA, and considered its historical context and legislative intent. The justices ultimately concluded that IEEPA was never intended to serve as a tool for restructuring the entire economy through sweeping global tariffs. Instead, it was designed to address specific, extraordinary threats to national security, not to be used as a broad economic policy lever. Congress, the court noted, did not intend to cede its constitutional power to regulate foreign commerce to the executive branch without clear, explicit language. The legislative branch retains primary authority over trade policy, and any transfer of that power must be unmistakable. The court emphasized that IEEPA was crafted for genuine immediate crises, such as national security emergencies or sudden international threats, not for addressing ongoing chronic policy problems or economic challenges that require long-term solutions. Allowing a president to unilaterally declare economic challenges as emergencies, the court warned, would set a dangerous precedent. It would open the door for future presidents to bypass Congress and reshape the economy at will, undermining the separation of powers. The ruling underscored the importance of checks and balances, preserving congressional authority in trade matters and ensuring that no single branch of government could dominate economic policy without oversight. By striking down the tariffs, the court defended legislative integrity and reinforced the principle that the president is not above the law. nor a king who can act unilaterally. Notably, the decision united both conservative and liberal justices, showing that the issue transcended ideological divides and was rooted in a shared commitment to constitutional principles. In the end, it was a constitutional ruling that restored the balance of power, correcting an overreach by the executive branch and reaffirming the foundational role of Congress in shaping the nation's economic future. Anticipating an unfavorable ruling, the Trump administration shifted its tariff strategy. They abandoned IEEPA, leaning on Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act and Section 301 of the Trade Act. These statutes offer more legal deference, making them harder to challenge. New tariffs on lumber, furniture, and more were announced, preempting the Supreme Court's decision. The administration's strategy signals unwavering protectionism, regardless of the court's opinion. Commerce launched new investigations into sectors like semiconductors, laying groundwork for more tariffs. This embeds a protectionist policy, difficult to untangle, regardless of future administrations or judiciary decisions. The Supreme Court's decision doesn't immediately undo economic disruption from tariffs. Businesses may see relief from high costs, but new tariffs under Sections 232 and 301 keep the trade war alive. Politically, the ruling is a blow to the Trump administration, repudiating a key economic agenda. Critics gain ammunition, citing executive overreach and failed policy. The administration's defiant response plays to a base supportive of protectionism. New tariffs allow rewarding allies and punishing adversaries using trade as a political tool. National security tariffs could be more damaging, risking inflation and economic instability. The ruling solved one legal problem but pushed toward policies threatening long-term stability. The Supreme Court's decision sends a mixed signal internationally. It offers hope for a return to stable, rules-based trade, but the administration's response is defiant. New tariffs under Section 232 strain diplomatic relationships, undermining alliances. Countries may reassess trade strategies, diversifying to reduce U.S. dependence. Retaliation could escalate, risking a cycle of trade conflicts. The ruling attempts to shore up the post-WW economic system, but the administration's tactics show presidential power to disrupt. The world watches to see if constitutional guardrails or executive will prevail. This episode highlights the fragility of the international economic order. The recent tariff ruling marks the beginning of what many legal experts are calling a historic Supreme Court term, one that will rigorously test the boundaries of presidential power and the very structure of American democracy. This term, the court is poised to address some of the most consequential questions about the limits of executive authority in decades. With a conservative majority on the bench, the justices are set to rule on a series of high-profile cases that probe the reach and restraint of the presidency. These decisions could redefine the balance of power between the branches of government for years to come. The court's bold move in the tariff case signals a willingness to challenge and even strike down major presidential policies, setting a precedent for judicial assertiveness. This is not just a legal battle. It's a statement about the role of the judiciary in American life. Previously, public opinion polls suggested that many Americans believed the Supreme Court was reluctant to rule against President Trump. However, this landmark decision has shattered that perception, demonstrating the court's capacity to act independently, regardless of political pressure. The independence of the court is not just a constitutional principle. It is the foundation of its legitimacy as the ultimate arbiter of the law. When the court stands apart from political influence, it reinforces public trust in the justice system. In the coming months, the justices will face a series of pivotal cases that will further test whether the court is willing to continue checking executive power, or if it will defer to the presidency in times of national controversy. The tariff ruling is more than a single decision. It's a clear signal that the judiciary intends to play an active, vigilant role in policing the separation of powers and upholding constitutional checks and balances. As the nation watches closely, the question remains: will this new era of judicial fortitude mark a lasting rebalancing of power between the branches of government, shaping the course of American democracy for generations to come?